of course, don't go anywhere because it is time to cover Michael Madigan's indictment and much more in tonight's Spotlight Politics. Welcome back, Amanda Vinicky, Heather Sharon, and Paris Schutz. So, speaking of Mike Madigan's indictment, he was arraigned today in federal court. Heather, you listened to this on the phone. It was a phone hearing. What kind of prison time could Madigan face if he is found guilty eventually of the 22 counts against him, and also by phone?
By phone because of the COVID-19 pandemic. And we did not hear a single word from the famously taciturn former House Speaker. He let his attorney do the talking for him, entering a plea of not guilty. He is facing 22 counts, and at least 7 of those counts come with a maximum prison time of 20 years, while the other counts come with maximum sentences between 5 and 10 years. So it is a significant amount of prison time he is looking at if convicted, although, of course, he's unlikely to serve those maximums because of federal sentencing guidelines. I should also point out that Michael Madigan is 79 years old, so any significant prison sentence could potentially mean that he would spend his retirement behind bars.
Heather, what also about his co-defendant, Mike McClain? What kind of prison time is he facing?
So he is also facing decades in prison. Now, he is also indicted on many of the same charges, although he is also awaiting trial in a separate case involving the orchestration of the Commonwealth Edison bribery scheme that we've been talking about on this program. It seems like 4 months now. So he is also facing a significant prison sentence. He barely made it on to today's telephonic phone call, telling the judge before the judge cut him off that he was not great with computers and technology.
Okay. So Amanda, next hearing is scheduled for April 1st, but how long do you expect this to take before it actually goes to trial?
Oh gosh, this is going to take a sorry about that. They a little cut out. It's going to take years. I mean, we've been promised by the prosecutors that they expect large amounts of discovery to be made available. April 1st is going to likely be another virtual hearing, and one in which we don't expect that we are going to, again, hear anything from Speaker Madigan, see his face, anything along those lines. It will be years one expects before that happens.
Quite some time. So meanwhile, some of the lawmakers who blocked Madigan's speakership that led to his resignation asked the governor to halt some of the former speaker's pork projects. Paris, tell us a little bit about these projects and why the legislators opposed them.
Well, there's a handful of them that were in the last $45 billion state capital bill. One of them outlined in the Better Government Association was $98 million for noise abatement at a rail yard in Bedford Park. That is sought by some hotel owners there. Bedford Park is just south of Midway. It's where all the Midway Airport hotels are. So obviously an issue that's probably important to hotel owners. And in that BGA report, it showed that one of the owners there had hired Madigan and Getzendanner for their property tax appeals. That, of course, is at the heart of some of the allegations against Madigan, that people doing state business, he is arm twisting them in so many ways to hire his law firm. Now, we don't know if these are corruptly gotten deals. I mean, State Rep Ann Williams led the charge here, putting the halt on them to review them. So the noise abatement and other deals like that might sorely be needed. We don't know. So they're going to review to see if there was funny business in the way that those were awarded. And if not, those deals might still go forward.
Heather, Governor J.B. Pritzker, he went one step further, though, stripping Shirley Madigan of her state role. Tell us about that.
Well, Shirley Madigan is a longtime supporter of the Illinois arts scene. She was the head of the Illinois Arts Council, which was largely a ceremonial role. But it's clear that after her husband's indictment, that was no longer tenable, because no Illinois politician wants to be associated with anyone from the Madigan family at this point, especially Governor Pritzker, since he acknowledged that he was interviewed by FBI agents in connection with the probe as a witness, and that he said he was happy to help them and spoke with them for about an hour just before Madigan was indicted a week ago.
No, in another court. Go ahead, Amanda.
Yeah, just really interesting here that the governor, so SHIRLEY Madigan remains on the Arts Council, which is, as Heather noted, ceremonial, but also does issue a whole lot of grants to arts organizations. And so Madigan remains on it. She's just no longer going to be chair. And what's interesting is the governor evidently called Madigan on Tuesday to say, hey, I'm going to have your wife step down or force your wife out of this role. By the way, that was before the indictment had been issued. And Pritzker said, no, when he talked to the feds, he didn't have any inkling that an indictment was coming, just that they were asking him about what seemed like it could be wrongdoing. But it sure as heck does seem like, with the timing of things, that Pritzker was looking to get out in front of something that he thought would be coming down the pike.
Okay, so there have been a few high-profile donations from political campaigns to the legal funds of some politicians. Heather, Mike Madigan in particular used $2 million from his political fund to pay for his attorneys, and he has $10.5 million more to go. Now, there's a lawsuit about this practice. Remind us about that.
That's right. So it has been settled Illinois election law that elected officials can use campaign cash to pay their lawyers if they get into criminal trouble. And one of those elected officials who has used that campaign fund to do just that was disgraced former Alderman Danny Solis. His successor, Alderman Byron Sigcho Lopez, sued over that and has taken the case all the way to the Illinois Supreme Court, where we are awaiting a ruling from the High Court whether that's a proper use of campaign funds. Madigan, of course, isn't the only person to dip into his campaign fund, and I just crunched the numbers. It looks like he has spent $4.8 million over 2020 and 2021 on his legal defense. Alderman Ed Burke has also spent hundreds of thousands of dollars on his legal defense, and he hasn't even gone to trial yet. Maybe sometime 2022, 2023, we're still waiting.
Now, politicians and their campaign staff, switching gears a little bit here, they're filing petitions this week. Paris, any surprises so far?
Doesn't seem like any surprises. The folks that have announced that they're candidates for certain races, they file their petitions, of course. Everyone has until next Monday. The surprises usually come after this period when you've got a litany of election lawyers going in and challenging those petitions. So the modus operandi is you want to get at least 3 times the amount of signatures than are required, because probably up to half of them can be phony. People just write, goofy, fake addresses. They screw around. But then other times we see lawyers getting petitions tossed because they didn't bind them correctly, which is a very undemocratic practice, really, if that's why a candidate's not going to be able to run for office. But then a lot of times they just didn't do a very good job getting clean petitions. So good campaigns know that they have to have good petition gatherers who aren't going to get more fake signatures than not.
Heather, an early list of possible challengers to Mayor Lightfoot floating around. It's kind of long. Are we going to see, Gary Chico, Chuy Garcia, Paul Vallis running again?
The field is wide open. We are about a year away from Election Day, and it's important to note that even though everyone expects Mayor Lori Lightfoot to seek a second term, she has yet to announce that she will. And let's also remember that a year before the 2019 mayoral election, had I come on the show and suggested that Lori Lightfoot would be mayor in 2019, you guys probably would have laughed at me. She was nowhere. So we don't know what's going to happen in 2023. It is wide open, and especially since Lori Lightfoot is thought to be vulnerable on a number of issues, including Chicago's persistently high crime and violence.
And there's certain different interests that are looking for a candidate, like business groups looking for a candidate. Congressman Mike Quigley said in the Sun-Times he's been approached. He doesn't know what he wants to do. He's focused on Ukraine. You heard State Rep Cam Buckner earlier in our show saying he's strongly considering, and he's going to make a decision on it after the legislative session in the spring. It's kind of curious that there is no coalesced, business candidate. You have Ken Griffin throwing $20 million into the governor's race, and he says his biggest issue is crime. Well, crime in Chicago the Chicago mayor has, I think, more control over crime policy, police policy, and we haven't heard Ken Griffin really talk about any interest in the mayor's race.
Heather, you mentioned, obviously, the city's persistent violence. I want to get to that before we run out of time, because today at a news conference, the mayor addressed the spike in violence on the CTA and what's being done about it. Take a look.
The word is visibility. What we need to do is make sure that on every platform, across our system, that the commuters, see the visibility of sworn police officers as well as these unarmed security guards.
So, Amanda, would you say that Chicago violence is her campaign's #1 issue or biggest Achilles heel?
Both. I think that let's use the CTA as an example. If you have folks that are frightened about taking the CTA to go to work, to go downtown, then you don't have people in the central business district as you're trying to gear up after all of these COVID shutdowns and returning to work as offices are getting back up and going. So it is something that I think touches really every corner of city politics and policy, and is certainly going to be something that you're going to see her try to get out in front of, but is going to be difficult to do so. That's why you have such a wide league of people looking to take her on.
Okay, so switching gears to COVID really quick before we go, we know that Chicago Public Schools, they're ending the mask mandate starting next week. We've heard from both CPS CEO Pedro Martinez as well as CTU Vice President Stacey Davis Gates about this week. Heather, could the CTU possibly have another work stoppage on its hands over dropping the mask mandate?
So it's hard to tell at this point what the will of the House of Delegates will be, but I think it should not be overlooked that the CTU leadership was very clear in their response to this announcement by Mayor Lori Lightfoot, that she did it without consulting or negotiating with them, and that it breaks the agreement that they reached back in January. Those are two very serious things when it comes to the Chicago's Teachers Union and really any city labor organization. Those agreements are hard fought and carefully negotiated, and I think that it will have perhaps a significant impact on the mayor's continuing tense relationship with the union, that she decided to break that agreement. She said her hands were tied by the downstate judge reviewing an attempt to overturn the school's mask mandate. But I think we are only starting to sort of see how this issue is going to play out.
And of course, we know that CTU has filed an unfair labor practice charge against the district for this, and I'm hearing late this evening from a source that this could be this could be considered as soon as next week. That's a consideration, of course. We don't know what the outcome will be just yet. And that is Spotlight Politics. Amanda Vinicky, Heather Sharon, and Paris Schutz. Thanks, everybody.